Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana
Janandana Vraja Janaranjana
Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Thank you. Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Pravikacharya Astutasha Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Charya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Pravikacharya Astutasha Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Jai Shri Prabhupada. So we'll be reading from 5th Canto, Chapter 19, Text 9, 8. Draveda Prabhu, can you please chant? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Suro.
Suro.
Asuro.
Asuro.
Vapi.
Vapi.
Ata.
Ata.
Vanaro.
Anaro.
Naraha.
Naraha.
Sarvatmana.
Sarvatmana.
Yah. Sukritagyam. Uttamam.
Uttamam.
Bhajeta Ramam.
Bhajeta Ramam.
Manujakritim.
Manujakritim.
Harim.
Harim.
Ya Uttaran.
Yautaran.
Anayat.
Anayat.
Koshalan.
Koshalan.
Divam.
Divam.
Iti.
Iti.
Suro Suro Vapatavanaro Nara.
Saro Saro Vapyatavanaro Nara.
Savatmanayak Sukritagyamuttamam.
Sarvatmanaya Sukritam Uttamam.
Bhajeta Ramam Manujakritim Harim.
Bhajeta Ramam Manujakritim Harim.
Ya Uttarananayat Koshalan Divam.
Ye Uttaran Anayat Koshalam Divam.
Iti. Suro Suro Vapyatavanaro Nara.
Saro Saro Vapyatavanaro Nara.
Savatmanayak Sukritagyamuttamam.
Sarvatmanaya Sukritam Uttamam.
Bhajeta Ramam Manujakritim Harim.
Bhajeta Ramam.
Ya Uttarananayat Koshalan Divam.
Ye Uttaran Anayat Koshalam Divam.
Iti.
Iti.
Suro Suro Vyapatavanaro Nara.
Saro Saro Vapyatavanaro Nara.
Savatmanayak Sukritagyam Uttamam.
Sarvatmanaya Sukritam Uttamam.
Bhajeta Ramam Manujakritim Harim.
Bhajeta Ramam Manujakritim Harim.
Ya Uttarananayat Koshalan Divam.
Ye Uttaran Anayat Koshalam Divam.
Iti.
Iti.
Suro Suro Vyapatavanaro Nara.
Sarvatmanaya Sukritam Uttamam.
Savatmanayak Sukritagyam Uttamam.
Bhajeta Ramam Manujakritim Harim.
Bhajeta Ramam Manujakritim Harim.
Uttaran Anayat Koshalam Divam.
Ya Uttarananayat Koshalan Divam.
Iti. Saro Saro Vapyatavanaro Nara. Sarvatmanaya Sukritam Uttamam. Bhajeta Ramam Manujakritim Harim. Ye Uttaran Anayat Koshalam Divam. Saro Saro Vapyatavanaro Nara.
Sarvatmanaya Sukritagnyam Uttamam.
Sarvatmanaya Sukrichayatamam Bhajete Ramam Manujakritim Harim Yautaran Anayat Koshalandivam Iti.
Should we always separate the iti? I mean,
Yeah, it's not part of the verse. You know.
So
This
should
means
we
that
just
this is
chant
the end
it
of this section of prayers.
Say it again.
This is the end of this section of prayers. So,
So it's usual that you split up the iti?
yeah, because the meter just ends with divam.
Would it be unacceptable just to chant it within a regular meter? Would that be unusual?
Yottaran anayat koshalan divamiti.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarvapyatavanaro nara
Savatmanaya sukatagyamuttamam. Bhajeta Ramam Manujakritim Harim Yottarananayat Koshalandivam.
Anyone else? Sarvatmanaya Sukritim Atmanamam Bhajeta Ramam Manusakritim Harim. Iti. Synonym and translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Suraha, demigod. Asuraha, demon. Va-api, or. Ata, therefore. Va, or. Anaraha, other than a human being. Bird, beast, animal, and so on. Naraha, a human being. Sarva Atmana, wholeheartedly. Yaha, who. Sukritagyam, easily made grateful. Uttamam, most highly elevated. Bhajita, should worship. Ramam, Lord Ramachandra. Manuja Akritim, appearing as a human being. Harim, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yaha, who. Uttaran, of northern India. Anayat, brought back. Koshalan, the inhabitants of Koshala Desha. Ayodhya, Divim, to the spiritual world, Vaikuntha. Iti, thus. Translation. Therefore, whether one is a demigod or a demon, a man or a creature other than man, such as a beast or bird, everyone should worship Lord Ramachandra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears on this earth just like a human being. There is no need of great austerities or penances to worship the Lord, for he accepts even a small service offered by his devotee. Thus he is satisfied, and as soon as he is satisfied, the devotee is successful. Indeed, Lord Sri Ramachandra brought all the devotees of Ayodhya back home, back to Godhead, Vaikuntha. Purport. Lord Sri Ramachandra is so kind and merciful to his devotees that he is very easily satisfied by a little service rendered by anyone, human or not. This is the special advantage of worshipping Lord Ramachandra. And there is the same advantage in worshipping Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Krishna and Lord Ramachandra, in the manner of kṣatriyas, sometimes showed their mercy by killing asuras. But Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu awarded love of God without difficulty even to the asuras. All the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but especially Lord Ramachandra, Lord Krishna, and later Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered many of the living entities present before them. Indeed, almost all of them. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is therefore represented in the six-armed form as ṣaḍ-bhūja-mūrti, which is a combination of Lord Ramachandra, Lord Krishna, and Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The best purpose of human life can be fulfilled by worshipping the ṣaḍ-bhūja-mūrti, the form of the Lord with 6 arms, 2 arms of Ramachandra, 2 arms of Krishna, and 2 arms of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sita Devi Pranamami Hare Priya Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So the other day, Dravida Prabhu reminded me to tell the story. It's about dreams. And you know, all of us were looking forward to that day when Kanai Balai will be on the altar. So I had a dream that Kanai Balai, he was doing arti, and everyone was so happy. But I noticed one thing, he wasn't in a dhoti. He was wearing regular clothing. So.
Short pants, right?
Short pants, yeah. And I looked at him, I said, Kanai, you can't wear that. And I looked around and nobody said anything. So I said, okay. So I woke up and I kind of chuckled to myself, like that is Kanai, you know. And the other dream that I was reminded of was by Mukunda Charna Prabhu. And we were discussing about cleansing the heart. And I had a dream that I went inside a friend's house, and this friend's house was full of cat poop, cat stool. And this friend of mine told me, here, have a seat. And when I looked on the seat, there was cat poop there. And I told him, no, I don't want to sit there. And he said, you can sit anywhere. And then when I looked, there was trash. It was not a very clean place. And so I just wanted to retell these stories.
I was there when you were having that dream. I was in the room, and you were yelling out in your sleep. You were going, ah!
Yeah, because this friend of mine, he was telling me, sit down, and I didn't want to sit there. So similarly, when Krishna sees our heart, what does he see? Is it clean or is it filthy? So we should try to clean the heart, purify the heart. And it's described that there's different incarnations, actually innumerable incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they're compared to the oceans or the waves of the ocean. You can't count. And in one of these incarnations is one of my favorite, the Ramayana, the story of Lord Ramachandra. And so a lot of people, they like to read about superheroes, they like to read about adventures and romance. But the Ramayana contains all of that. Adventure, suspense, romance, betrayal, heroes and villains. So it's complete. And Balaram Prabhu, he mentioned that in today's times, movies or even, stories, they don't even have morals now or lessons. They're just basically useless. How to get the girl back, and it's very self-centered. And so in the Kali Yuga, we have attachments, very bad attachments. Sometimes to our cars, to our house, our wealth, our spouses. And when Lord Ramachandra came to this planet, he displayed the opposite, detachment. He left his kingdom, he left everything actually. And he showed a government that is God conscious. It's described that everyone, all the citizens, they loved Lord Ram like a father. And Srila Prabhupada explained that the paper currency in our government today is a cheating process. Why? Because they encourage people to work very hard and they get paid little pieces of paper. And Srila Prabhupada, he says, when they run out of money, they print new ones. So it's cheating. And in the Vedic economy, it was based on a bartering system. If you wanted something, you would do trades, goods. And unfortunately, we don't have that in today's times. And they also had gold and silver standards, because gold actually has a quality to it, and the quantity was limited. Srila Prabhupada explains this proverb. There was two men, and one of the man, he asked the other man, "Are you intelligent?" So the other man, he started looking in his pocket, and then the man asked him, "Why are you looking in your pocket?" So the man, he said, "If I have money in my pocket, that means I'm intelligent." And some of this is true, because when you have money, it does require intelligence, hard work, perseverance. And sometimes we may acquire wealth by some good karma. And so attachments, to cut something, a sharp instrument is needed. And to cut the mind from attachments, we need strong words, it's required. And so sometimes I do this on book distribution. I use sharp words. And I was telling Mogalila this, that I was in Balboa Park and I saw this old man, he was walking. He was stumbling along, actually. And I called him over and I said, "Excuse me, I have a question for you." So he said, "What's that?" So I told him, "Have you found the secrets? Have you found the secrets to life yet?" And then he looked at me, he said, "No." So then I told him, "You're wasting your time, young man." And he looked at me. And I told him, "You should start asking, what is the purpose of life? Why am I here?" He refused to take a book, but I was able to have a nice interaction with him. And sharp words, I like to do it because, like I mentioned, you only have about 1 or 2 minutes before they walk away. So you should say something meaningful. And there was this group of 3 people at Balboa Park. They were very well dressed. They looked nice, sharp, a business suit, slacks, this and that. So I called one of them, and the eldest one came over and asked him, "What do you do for work?" And he said, "I don't work." And I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "I just beg for money on the streets." And he was kind of implying that's what I do as a monk. So then I told him, "Let me ask you a question." And he said, "What's that?" He had his hands in his pocket and he was smiling. So I told him, "What happens when you die?" And you can see his face just change. And then he said, "I have to go." He didn't want to talk about it. So then his 2 other friends, I guess they were his colleagues or maybe their sons, 2 of them stayed and they wanted to hear this conversation, this topic about dying, what happens to the soul and the body when it leaves. And so I was telling them about karma and reincarnation, rebirth. And they didn't want to take the book, but they appreciated our conversation. They gave a donation without taking a book. So, once upon a time in Treta Yuga, and Srila Prabhupada says millions of years ago, there was a king. And like many other kings, they are looking for a son to take over their kingdom. But this king, he had no sons, although he had many wives. And so he asked his ministers, "How can I achieve a son?" So they asked him to perform a horse sacrifice, Ashvamedha sacrifice. So after performing the sacrifice, there was a being that came out of the fire, and he was holding a celestial porridge. So he told this king, he was actually the emperor of the earth, and he told him, "You give this to your queens." So he gave the porridge to his most prominent queen. Her name was Kaushalya. And then the other 2 queens were named Sumitra and Kaikeyi. And so he gave half of the porridge to Kaushalya, and then half to Kaikeyi, and then the other half to Sumitra. And so they had sons. The Kaushalya, she gave birth to Lord Ramachandra. And Queen Kaikeyi, she gave birth to Bharat. And Sumitra, she gave birth to twins, Lakshman and Shatrugna. And what I love about this story is that each of these brothers, they served the other. Lakshman, he would serve Lord Ram, and Shatrugna, he would serve Bharat. And when I was explaining earlier that the Ramayana is full of different suspense and stories, and one of this is betrayal. But before this king, he was named Nemi. But he was so powerful that he was assisting the demigods in a battle against the demons. And it was described that he was fighting so heroically that his chariot was facing 10 different directions, flying, moving here and there. So they named him Dasharat, 10 chariots. So this king, the youngest queen who his favorite was named Kaikeyi. And she had asked for a boon on the battlefield, but she said, I don't need them yet. I'll ask them at a proper time. And so when it was time to coronate the next king, there was a hunchback lady, a maidservant. Her name was Manthara. And Manthara, she was a maidservant of Queen Kaikeyi.
Yes. Mantra means she stirs up, stirring up. She's stirring up.
Yeah. And Queen Kaikeyi, she actually loved Lord Ram as her own child. She didn't have any, she didn't bear any malice towards him. Yeah, she actually loved Lord Ram. And this lady, Manthara, she started poisoning Kaikeyi's mind. If your son is installed as the next king, he's going to become worse than a servant to Lord Ram. The reason why she said this was because she was only interested in her own position. And as other queens, she was a hunchback, so she was made fun of, she was teased a lot. But when she was the maidservant of the favorite of the queens, her position changed. So she started poisoning Kaikeyi's mind, saying, don't install Ram as the king. And so later on, they went back and forth, and Manthara, she eventually convinced her to ask for these two boons now. One boon was to banish Lord Ram to the forest for 14 years. And the second one was to install Bharat as the king. And the king, when he heard of this, he actually fainted. He had so much affection and love for Lord Ramachandra. Lord Ramachandra, he exhibited so much morals and ethics, and he was a perfect son, actually. And when I was speaking about detachment, he left the kingdom just like that. He also, because he wanted to show the duty of a son is to follow the orders of the father. And Lord Ram was the only one banished, but Mother Sita, she came along with Lord Ram, and also Lakshman. It's a nice story. So anyway, I don't want to get too much into it, but there's another instance of Lord Shiva's bow. And Lord Shiva, he was angry at the demigods. So the demigods, they were able to pacify Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva handed this bow to the demigods. And then the demigods handed this to Janaka's ancestor named Devavrata. And Janaka, he wanted a son. So she asked, anyway, Mother Sita came out of this golden lotus flower. And he set a test to see who could lift Lord Shiva's bow. And it's described, it took, sometimes you hear 300, sometimes 800 men just to move this bow. Powerfully built men. And so they had this contest who could lift Lord Shiva's bow. And every king that was there, they tried, but they failed miserably. And when it was time for Lord Ram, he looked at Vishwamrita, and he nodded, yes, you can. So what Lord Ram did was he circumambulated the bow, he showed respects, and then he grabbed the middle portion of the bow, and he lifted it, just with ease. And it's described that when he lifted it, it made a tremendous sound. Not only that, but when he went to string the bow, he broke it in half. So Janaka Maharaj, he was very pleased, so he knew this was Lord Vishnu. And Mother Sita, she always wanted Lord Vishnu as her husband. But Narada Muni told Janaka that Sita is the eternal consort of Lord Vishnu. So yeah. And in the purport, it was talking about how the Lord, he accepts a very small service offered to him. So whatever services we do for Krishna, he appreciates it. Whether it's cleaning the floors, cleaning the temple, whether it's cooking, dressing the deities, any small service, gardening, just out of our love for Krishna, he takes it and he doesn't remember that service. And there was a pastime, Srila Prabhupada, he was, after a Pandal program, he was sitting down with his devotees, and a young Indian boy wanted to meet Srila Prabhupada. So he sat on the feet, he sat with the devotees next to Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada pointed at the door. And the young Indian boy, he looked at the door, he didn't say anything, he got up and he left. So then Srila Prabhupada told his sannyasis, you tell him to wash pots first. So he told them, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, what he would do to test the sincerity of a person is to see if they can do pots, because it's a menial service. And it always reminds me of Pavamana Prabhu, how he joined ISKCON. He read Srila Prabhupada's books, and he always wondered, what is devotional service? So he called the temple, and the temple commander or president told him, you come to the temple. So he came to the temple and he asked, what is devotional service? So this temple president told another devotee, take him to the kitchen. Take him to the kitchen. And then when he got there, he saw the stack of pots. So he said, this is devotional service. And then Pavamana Prabhu understood, this is devotional service, menial service. So it was a very heartwarming story. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said that he awarded love of God freely, even to the asuras. And one pastime that I can think of is Jaga and Madai. It's described that these two brothers, they were born from Brahmin families. They were actually studied in scripture. But they studied scripture to break all these rules and regulations. They wanted to break all of these Brahminical qualities or activities. And so Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gave both of them love of God. So that means that we Kali Yugas, we have a chance to go back home back to Godhead. And when you go out and book distribute, sometimes you meet Buddhist monks or people that are practicing Buddhism. And so their main idea is nirvana, or stopping birth. But there's a saying, moksha lagu takrit, and it means that bhakti yoga, it's so powerful that it minimizes the importance of liberation. And when I tell the Buddhists this, they don't understand. That liberation in Krishna consciousness actually means performing your occupational duties, which is service to Krishna. I was distributing books yesterday, and I met this group of people. I asked them 3 questions. What is happiness? What is liberation? And what is peace? And they had a hard time answering these questions. Liberation, what do you mean? Freedom, you know. So they were telling me that freedom means you're able to do whatever you want. And then peace means not fighting with anyone. So I told them that freedom means being freed from the demands of the mind. And they looked at me like, what are you talking about? So I told them that the mind dictates, go here, go there, buy this, buy that, buy this coffee, buy that coffee. And so I told them, are you free from that? And then they were holding a cup of coffee, which was ironic, that's why. Huh? I noticed it, that's why I said. Yeah. And then so I told them every day they're forced to do things, although they know it's not good. And then so I told them that's what freedom means. And they appreciate our conversation, so they took a book. And I told them, you guys have friends? Give these books to them also. So now they're becoming book distributors. I was recently at the PCG in Los Angeles, the Philippines consulate, to renew my passport. And it's funny because Tyler and I, we were driving up there. And I looked at the dress code and he said, you know, wear something nice. So they're not going to take the bottom portion, so I just wore my kurta. And when I got there, the security lady told me you can't go in. And I said, why not? And she said, you're wearing sandals. And I looked down and I was wearing my slippers. And I said, but they're not going to see this. And they said, but it's part of the dress code. You have to wear closed-toed shoes. So Tyler and I, I don't want to tell the details, but we were frantically looking for places that sell shoes. And the big 5 across the street, they weren't open till 10. And my appointment was at 9. And it was already 9 o'clock. So we were rushing here and there. And most of the shops, they weren't open till 10. So I went to a CVS, and they were open. So I went in there and asked them, do you guys have shoes? And the lady said, yeah, in aisle 7, and there's some on the shelf. So I went, and all of them were ladies' sizes. They were too small, and I was thinking, what am I going to do? I'm late now. And I kept looking, and behind all these slippers, there was this pair of white shoes. They were bigger than the rest. So I tried it on, and it was snug, but it fit. So I rushed back to the Philippines embassy. And so the lady looked at me, so she gave me a thumbs up, like, good job. Actually, I was going to ask her, can I borrow your shoes just for 1 hour? You know, but I knew that wasn't good. So after I got everything, what was interesting is that when I went to take my photo, the lady told me you have to wipe off the paint on your face. So I cleaned off my tilak. And when I was taking the picture, some of my beads, my neck beads were showing. So they told me you have to tuck that. So I tucked the left side, and then he took a picture. And they said, oh, it's still showing. So I tucked the right side. And it was fully covered. And so he took the picture, and I was thinking, they don't want me to be a devotee. Just like Prahlad Maharaj, his only fault was becoming a devotee, Krishna consciousness, but he created friction between him and his father, Hiranyakashipu. And it also made me think of this line that Srila Prabhupada says. He says, unless one is a Vaishnav, he cannot understand the activities of a Vaishnav. And yesterday at the lounge, I was seeing this. There was a lot of people that were participating, you know, in the chanting and clapping, but there were also people that were just looking like, what are they doing? But they don't understand that they're being purified. And it says that one time, Srila Prabhupada, he was at Venice Beach, and a devotee or a disciple asked him, Srila Prabhupada, doesn't the waves look bigger than yesterday? So Srila Prabhupada, he says, never think of them as big or small. Always know that they're dangerous. So then he quoted Chanakya Pandit saying, there are 3 things that you should end immediately: fire, debt, and disease. So we should take care of this. And first, it starts off with our sadhana. As initiated devotees, we take vows to chant 16 rounds. That's actually the main vow, to chant 16 rounds. And so it starts off as, oh, I'm not going to, I missed my chanting. So then you go like that. We may not consider it very small, but throughout the days, it's going to have an effect. And another example is like flirting. You know, a man and a boy, they start flirting with each other, but they don't know that it's unconsciously there's a plant that's being planted in their hearts for desire. So it starts off like that. And then the third one is Vaishnava aparad. You know, we may say something to a devotee like, oh, you know, starts off something like that. And then later on, it becomes a custom. We start committing so much offenses towards devotees. And then eventually, a brahmachari, he gets married. And then the sadhana, it stops completely. He stops chanting, he starts eating meat, eggs, fish, all these other things that we took before the deities, before our spiritual master, before the Vaishnavas, that we promise not to do these things. No meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, and no illicit sex. So these three things are compared to that. It starts off very small, but it actually grows if we don't take care of it. And one more story. I was distributing books at La Jolla Cove the other day. It was towards the end. And there was a man that approached me. He said, "Are you still selling books?" And I said, "Yeah, what do you like to do?" He said, "Oh, I meditate." And two of his friends came. And they were very nice, actually. They're trying to start their own business. And I was explaining to them the Bhagavad Gita and the different books. And he said, "I have that book, I have that book." He has Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. And I told him, "How did you get it?" And he said it was a gift. So someone gave him a Bhagavad Gita. And he appreciated the conversation so much that he gave a donation, and he took another set of books. And I invited them to the Krishna Lounge yesterday, but they didn't come. But besides that, they, you know, like what Balaram Prabhu said, even as monks, sometimes appreciation, it's nice, you know. Thank you for doing this. Thank you. You gave a nice class, you know. This encourages the brahmacharis to keep going, because Balaram Prabhu, he said monk life is not just celibate life, but, you know, waking up early in the morning, doing service, all of that, it piles up sometimes. And if you're not strong enough, you start doing these things, weak sadhana, flirting, and Vaishnava aparad. So we should be careful with what we do, what we think of. Okay, Hare Krishna. Any questions, comments, corrections? Yes, Trivita.
Hare Krishna.
All right, 1 second, Boo.
Yes.
I'm just thinking, you know, you meet these people, sometimes they have a Bhagavad Gita, or they've heard of the Bhagavad Gita, and they take a Bhagavad Gita. Mm. Would it be a good idea, maybe we can make up a card or a little notice or something that for the class, they may think, oh, I'm reading the Gita, maybe I can get online and hear the class.
We actually...
Oh, you have that already?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's some Matajis, their service is to put together the sets, and we put the Bhagavad Gita classes, your class, in the Bhagavad Gita covers. Yeah. Sticker. And we also have bookmarks. Mm-hmm.
Bookmark is the Sunday feast one side, the Bhagavad Gita class the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Ravi Teja Prabhu.
So, Prabhu, this is regarding the devotional service. So, in the beginning, when we take up services, even pot washing or anything, like we feel it so special, like we are getting Radharani's mercy. So, like even while reading and all, initially, like service, devotional activities will be so fresh. But eventually, it becomes monotonous, or like we kind of, like the taste kind of decreases. So, how to keep always that freshness and how to enjoy like continuously?
I was sitting here in class one time, and Dharma Setu Prabhu was giving class, and he mentioned this word, what do you say? Bhakta bliss, you know. When you first come around, you start feeling all these. But someone explained that it's to give us a taste of a real, true devotional service. But like everything else, it, you know, it's due to our, what's that saying? familiarity breeds contentment. Yeah. So we start seeing the devotees as ordinary people. We start seeing service as a chore. We start seeing it as... But one thing that... I forgot, it was Soul, Bhakta Soul. He asked Balaram, how do I know my day was worth, service? And then Balaram said, just go do pots. So whenever he's in the kitchen, he said something like, how do I know my day wasn't spent, uselessly? How do I know I did something? And you told him, just do pots, like that. So whenever he's in the kitchen, he's always fired up about doing pots, and he told me that story, and I said, wow, because when you do pots, it's a nice activity. The cooks, their pots are prepared, the deities get their prasad or their bhoga, and then it's cleaner also. And for me, what helps is to remember that when Krishna is pleased, the soul becomes pleased. Yeah. Balaram.
Yeah, I think I remember talking to Soul about that, because he was saying, he was asking about time and how do we know if we didn't just waste our day or whatever. And I was saying about pots because I was mentioning that because you could see the result. Mm-hmm. There's some things in devotional service where you could see the result like very clearly, and sometimes, like for example, if someone's not that great of a book distributor, they go out and they may not see so many results. Like, in other words, they may not see so much books being distributed, right? Mm-hmm. So they'd be kind of discouraged. Maybe they don't have to be, but there's certain services where if you just do it, then there will be a result, just automatically. Like for example, washing pots. Okay, there's a big, huge pile of pots. You go in there, you wash them, and then now it's clean. Okay, there's the result. Mm-hmm. So sometimes devotees say that. I have heard over the years, like for example, Brigapati Prabhu. He told me, because he was, seeing how lousy of a book distributor I was. He was telling me, oh, maybe you should do something that you could clearly see the results. That might help you more. Learning mridanga, you could clearly see the results, or washing pots, or cooking an offering. But Kavi Chandra Swami was also mentioning that to me, that sometimes as a sannyasi he goes around and he gives so many classes, and it's tough because you don't really see. You give a class to 500 people. Okay, great. It was a class of 500 people, but the class started, the class ended, and then that was it. What was the result? What happened in everybody's consciousness? What was the transformation? It's hard to see. So that's why I was telling Saul, okay, you could do things like that, so you could just see the result. Mm-hmm. Of course, you go to books too. But anyways, that's.
I think it's similar to what I mentioned some time ago about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. There's a section in that book of Bhakti, what is it called? Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhava, that describes the importance of glorifying the holy name, because the holy name is a person, and you get reciprocation that way, and reminds you how wonderful it is just when you chant the holy name, you appreciate more. So that holds for everything. When you read Srila Prabhupada's books, especially with others, and there's so much glorification of devotional service, then when you're actually able to do it, it's right, from Adibhi's contempt, we have such a wealth of devotional service. It's time, I got to go to the temple, especially if you're initiated devotee, it's Mangalarti time, so there's something to do, there's always something to do, the schedule is there. And so the more that you hear and about the glorification of devotional service, in fact there's a verse that says even just hearing about the glories of devotional service is itself important devotional service. Mm. So to keep yourself enlivened, because as for the materialistic mind, affected by the modes of nature, it's certainly true that everything becomes hackneyed after a while. Even the so-called pleasures of this world, you want something new and fresh and new and fresh, because that's a reflection of how in the spiritual world everything is ever fresh, everything is ever new. It's not new 2 days the same. Even though when you read about it, it's like, oh, my, eternal function is to make the sandalwood paste for Krishna's pastimes eternally. I'm making sandalwood paste eternally. What else you got to show me? No, but within that experience, your consciousness is so great; it's ever fresh. You're thinking of Krishna. We're going to enjoy the paste. So keeping it fresh, kirtans and hearing from Bhagavatam will help it. Even if you do the same thing again, you're straightening you're cleaning the floor. It's not hackneyed. It's not boring. Just like the holy name doesn't become boring. If you're really hearing it, then you're spelling it. Otherwise, you stop chanting.
Thank you, Drew. One more quick story. The first few times I started coming around, I saw Janardhan washing pots, And I was thinking, Janardhan, can I help you? And he said something that really stuck to me. He said, no, Prabhu. I need all the purification I need. And he was smiling and washing pots, and I was like, wow, I'm going to do that. So I like to hold that mindset, that it's not for our pleasure, but it's for Krishna's pleasure. Shrimati Radharani. Yes, Mukunda Charna Prabhu.
Well, I was wondering I've wanted this for some time. I'm wondering if you have anything, or if anyone has something to offer about this. But these verses are talking about how it's, you don't need material qualifications to please Krishna. And then this verse specifically is talking about even those who aren't humans. And so then again, Prabhupada also brings it up again in the purport that even a beast or bird or some other creature can please Krishna and will benefit from that. So I've wondered for some time that it seems, at least the kind of anecdotes I hear from devotees, and I'm sure they're probably, I should say I'm sure, but I guess maybe that's what I'm asking. Maybe if others have other references. But I hear things like, and generally attributed to Srila Prabhupada, things like, Prabhupada said that, told Lokanath Swami for his bullock cart program that the oxen used for that bullock cart, who are, working for that bullock cart, that they're going straight back to Godhead. And one devotee who works with cows in ISKCON, he said, and I don't know where he got it from, he said that any cow, any of Krishna's cows, or any cow, on a ISKCON project, go straight back to Godhead. And there was some anecdote also attributed to Srila Prabhupada. I don't know the reference or if it's valid or not, but that I think I've heard it multiple times though. I can't remember where it's from, but that the flowers plucked for Krishna or for the garlands or something like that, like those flowers go back to Godhead, like the jivas and those flowers go back to God, something like that. So to me, it seemed a little imbalanced that you're saying that, okay, so if a being in an animal's body, animal's consciousness, just like works, as an ox, then pulls a cart, goes straight back to Godhead. But if I work like an ass in ISKCON, but I don't develop real sincerity, or I don't really develop a proper mood, or I don't develop if I don't really become humble or this, that, there's all these qualifications. It's not so easy just I can just spend my life in ISKCON, just go back to Godhead. That's a very valid point. It's emphasized and should be emphasized. So it seems the oxen and the animals and the plants, they kind of got it off easy because I have all these anartas to go through, but it seems that the flowers don't, where they just kind of get to skip that.
If you really work hard in ISKCON, then you'll take birth as an ox on one of our farms, and then you're home free.
So I'm wondering, is there something to the science of that or the philosophy of that, the mechanics of that? Why? It seems like I can't reject that idea that again, Lokanath Swami says Srila Prabhupada said those oxen go straight back to Godhead, but it seems there does seem to be a little different. Why aren't all the human beings? Yeah. In class. Yeah. Or in a memories tape. Yeah. That's the only one I actually have verified. I hear other stories all the time about this and the vegetables and this and that, and some I have less faith in than others. But it does seem like a clear like a distinct, I don't know, not a contradiction exactly, but I'm wondering, are there any other, examples in Shastra or ones that we definitely know Srila Prabhupada said, and maybe I can have a better grasp on this, because it does seem that if I just work like an oxen in ISKCON, I'm not going to go back to Godhead on that basis, but it seems like all these animals do. So
It reminds me of in the Ramayana when they're building the bridge, and Hanuman, he was throwing huge boulders, and there was a squirrel that's just throwing, grains of whatever. And Hanuman, he was proud of his, whatever strength he had, and he told the squirrel, get out of my way, you're not really helping. And Lord Ram, I heard this, that he actually told Hanuman, don't do that, because the squirrel, he's contributing whatever he can. So it's different qualities, I guess. And also our sincerity, do we really want to go back home, or do we still want to hang around here? Krishna's in the heart, he knows. So that's the best I can do. I'm sorry, Mukunda.
That's a good point about, because
Yeah, it's a great point that he was doing what he could, the squirrel, and Hanuman was doing what he could, but the capacity was different, right? So one person may be able to do certain things, and another person may not be able to do certain things, but they should do what they could do, or we should do what we could do. That's what Krishna wants to see. Is this person doing what they could do, right? Not cheating, not being lazy, not trying to skip out and giving 100%. Because if someone gives 100%, then they're more likely. And of course, some people say, okay, well, even then they give 100%, but if they're not fully purified, then they won't go back to Godhead. But there is many statements Srila Prabhupada said where, if you give 100% of your energy to Lord Chaitanya's movement, then, Lord Chaitanya will appear in your mind, even if you forget him. There's so many statements like that. In other words, a person may not be fully purified, but then there could be some special mercy. Of course, even towards the end of a person's life, there's a lot that could happen at those last days or even last moments. Means a lot of purification could happen then also. So, like there's one devotee. It was like a really amazing story. Maybe if I'm able to give class tomorrow, if I make it that long. But I could tell that story, but it's a really amazing story, but about one Prabhupada disciple and how he pretty much deviated from devotional service in so many ways. But then at the very end, got some special mercy. So I won't tell the details right now. But.
And I also heard that Krishna is more anxious to have us back home than we are to go home. Okay, Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Govardhan Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
My question is, if Lord Ramachandra accepts even a small service offered by his devotee, what small service should I offer?
Everything, mind, body, and words. But Krishna is very kind. He accepts whatever little service we're capable of doing. There's a pastime. There was an old Matsuji here. She was incapable of doing any other service but just sweep the patio and sweep the front. And she took that service very seriously, and she actually kind of chastised the brahmacharis. Hey, this is my service. So, yeah, whatever service we can do to our capacity, Krishna will see, and Krishna will appreciate.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Vijay. Grant Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.